Dear all, welcome to EPM Chronicles and Confessions. How are you all? Nice to see you. And we have Soumya Chowdhury with us. Soumya, please explain your into your journey and everything.
Thank you so much, Tim. Thank you for having me in this show, right? And I started my EPM journey close to 20 years back, right? It's going to be 20 years. And it was into those EPM Hyperion, those days we used to call a Hyperion, right? Hyperion 6 days, right? And from there, did all sorts of roles with elevating myself from a developer to a team leader to kind of running the end-to-end business process transformation. And few years back, right, I was kind of also leading the EPM practice for my last employer, right, with close to 400 plus people, right. So that's where I kind of also diversified from the Oracle EPM part of the world into multiple other EPM tools and technologies, which were also kind of coming into the market, right? That's where we kind of wanted to kind of play on a larger diversified field, and we wanted to see what the all the EPM tools and technologies which are coming out in the market, what it has to offer. Earlier, it was, you understand, right? It was a very, very small world with Oracle EPM and SAP's BPC playing the practically the 50-50 halves, or I would say 80, 60-40 halves of the world, right, on the EPM world. So from there, right, I started looking to see how we can push the boundaries. And when we were talking about process transformations across the planning analysis and stuff like that, right, we realized that there are a lot of small white spaces which just does not get answered by just a EPM tool, right? The data basically plays a humongous part on how you kind of take decision. And then when you kind of and also to track that, how those insights that you kind of get from your EPM basically are acted on, right? And thereby we started thinking that this is not a journey just from a data to insight, but it's also a journey from insight to action, and also measuring the action to impact part of the world as well, right? So that's where I kind of moved a little bit into product building and stuff like that, and then moved to UK to kind of build out an organization who can actually deliver all these things to the customers, take these things to market.
Sure, that's very nice. And I ask this question to everyone when I do this. It's just because it's sometimes very hard to explain what we actually do to people who, what we actually do to people that we don't know that much or don't know what we do. So any humorous EPM misconceptions when you try to explain what it was?
Oh,
What EPM is?
absolutely. Absolutely. I had many, right? Probably I will kind of share a couple. Though my parents still think that, I kind of fix computers for
Yeah,
people.
I relate to that.
So uh, this is where right now we were implementing for a Middle East company, and it was a complete greenfield implementation. And the ERP and the EPM package of Oracle was kind of sold together. And their conception was that they are doing all the groundwork for ERP establishment and stuff like that, and the EPM is basically was sold as the intelligent part, right, the analytics part of the things. And I thought that this tool, once I kind of implement that, it's going to do all the things, all the forecasting, because it's got all the actuals and stuff like that. It will be doing the forecasting and stuff like that, everything for me, and I don't have to I'm just going to run a report and I'm going to see what's my forecasted number and variance. So I said that, your vision is very, very forward thinking. Definitely we will be there in next 10, 15 years, but not as of now, right? Similarly, right, there were misconceptions around when we talk about the multidimensionality of
Yes.
EPM and OLAP, right? And the people who, even the technical folks who kind of come in from that flat out RDBMS world, it's a lot of challenge to kind of make them understand that, how the backend engine basically works, which is the heart of it.
Sure. No, completely understand that. So you look, I see you've done lots of things in your career. What has been your biggest EPM challenge, and how have you addressed that?
So I would say that, this is like long time back, right? I was implementing in Africa and South Africa. And that's where I first noticed the challenge because I was just a team lead, getting exposed to the business and the world and all of these things, right? And then I have seen that issue kind of keep coming on across, no matter the geography, no matter the size of the organization. It's more around that, when businesses bring in this, all this latest, greatest tools, technologies, right? They still are holding on to the old processes,
Yes.
right? And that's where we felt that that's a humongous challenge, right? How do we change the way you do things? Otherwise, right, if you are kind of clinging onto the same kind of a process, it just becomes a replication of your Excel tools and Excel systems, which is not going to give you the throughput. So it's not a problem with the product, it's not a problem with how it's being implemented, but it's how you also, how as a business sometimes they are kind of thinking to transform their process to use all the things which the technology kind of brings to the table, right? And I felt that the solution is mostly like coaching with humility. So when I talk about coaching with humility, uh, there are sometimes resistive situations where you call for a training, people will not come, but you will have to kind of continue to coach with humility. You have to listen a lot, and I learned this art. As I kind of progress, that we have to kind of learn from our customers, because many a times they use processes which, why they do that, they also don't know, right? They have been inherited that from somebody who has inherited that, right? But there is a deep bonding to that process. They would kind of continue to do that even after that is no more needed, right? And the technology can do it for them. So it's a change of mindset, a change of culture, takes time, takes compassion, takes humility, and that's where a lot of coaching and listening both is needed.
Yes, yes. Thank you so much. What has been your biggest EPM success story? What would you say was identified as?
uh, so if you're talking about the customer success stories, there are various different ones around how we kind of did the end-to-end technology transformation or a process transformation and stuff like that. But let me talk about two things, right? One was the Alexa thing, or the conversational analytics, which we kind of built out. That was back in 2017, 18 time, right? And it was all this Alexa and stuff like that were just coming into the market.
Yes.
And the other one I would like to also kind of cover about, we built out a data platform which was very focused towards planning analytics. We called it as a XP&A data fabric. And that's where we kind of brought in the thought process that, how do we connect different organizational planning tools, right? Because it sometimes becomes very difficult for even for a CEO to dictate what planning tool a HR is going to use, what planning tool a supply chain is going to use, and what planning tool a finance is going to use. But the need for a connected planning still remains, and how we do that with the layer. So those, I think, stands out because one was very transformational thought process, the Alexa, the conversation analytics piece, what we did. And the second thing, which basically became the enabler, and that's where we kind of felt that it's a foundation for a lot of changes on the experience data fabric, what we built.
Sure. No, fantastic. No, fantastic stories in there. Um, we all have our own personal reward mechanisms and stuff in terms of EPM, what we do. What's your most rewarding aspect of EPM? What do you feel?
So I felt that, see, if you talk about the OLAP, the backend engine, or an Upland calls it another name, but essentially, right, it's a multidimensional engine. It's a blank canvas at the end of the day, right? And for the purpose you can use it, that's where the imagination is the limit of ours, right? So that's where I have not only stuck myself only on solving FP&A problems or a planning analysis problem, right? Using planning tools, right? Using Oracle EPM, which was very close to my heart, and I have worked on that for the largest amount of time hands-on. We have solved for many different use cases, which nobody thought that we could even solve for.
Yeah, that's really good. Yeah. So in terms of we've all had funny career moments in terms of our careers. What would you say if there's a couple that you would find, or one that that stuck out for you in terms of a moment?
it was funny and scary as well. We were doing a production deployment, and I was still a senior developer at those days, right? And there were junior developers along with me, and we were in US, traveling to a customer location, getting that deployed over the weekend and stuff like that. And there was a dense restructure for all the non-EPM audience. It's when you kind of basically change something in your dimensions and you have to run it. So instead of running a refresh, somebody ran a create,
Yeah.
and an entire thing kind of
Yeah.
collapsed when we were
Yeah.
supposed to kind of just go out of office and say that, no, guys, we had done, and now let's enjoy the weekend, right? And and to add to that misery, right? And it was almost like 5:30 in US office. Things were like shutting down and all. And we then realized that, okay, for to kind of get to that RTO, we have to do a server restart and all of these
Oh
things. And the
God.
moment that started, the entire building suddenly became blackout. And we were kind of thinking, did this happen because of we were trying to reboot our Unix server, and it was, and we were but we kind of saved the day. We walked and slogged over the weekends,
Fantastic.
burned a lot of midnight oils. Monday morning, nobody knew. Things were kind of all up and running the way it should have been
Yeah, no,
Friday
no.
evening.
Yeah, no, no. That's something. Yeah. So the other thing is, I'm really particularly interested. You're an innovator. I've seen one of the best innovators in the industry I've seen, and you won multiple awards, I believe, from Oracle and stuff like that. So could you tell me more about some of your other innovations or some things you've got planned, or that you're doing in terms of innovations? Could be AI, could be anything.
Yeah, no, absolutely, absolutely. I'll kind of talk about the Alexa thing a bit in details, right, and how the journey kind of panned out. So, 2017-18, right? We got in this Amazon Alexa device. Now it's there in everybody's home,
Yeah.
right? And it kind of came in very, very new. And we were kind of tinkering it for our kids, right? Adding some Alexa custom skills and all. And surprisingly, at that point of time, we had a meeting. We were kind of ending a post go live support with one of our customers, and that's where we had a C-suite meeting. And he said that, see, this is all great and fine, but the moment I want to kind of change a model and try to ask that, if I do this, like the what if analysis part, Tim, right? I
Yeah.
have to kind of go to my business analyst. The business analyst then kind of comes back to me the next day. Then I have to kind of, okay, if the answer is not to my liking, what should I change? So it's a long drawn process, though you are telling that, you just can do it with a click. And I thought that, we need to kind of bring the technology to the edge a
Yes,
little more.
yes.
So that's where we kind of started thinking about, why don't we kind of bring in the analytics back into the boardroom, right? And that's where it kind of the idea seeded. And along with me, I had two of my colleagues at that point of time, Amarnath Kothapalli and Kavi Bharati Munuswamy. So three of us, we basically kind of sat together, and that's where we kind of started designing that Alexa custom scale,
Fantastic.
where you basically can go, Alexa, connect to planning, right? And it would go ahead and connect to your Oracle EPM cloud, right? So it used to kind of get those JSON requests, which would then pass it on to your AWS Lambda skill
Wow.
adapters. And within AWS Lambda skill adapter, and everybody knows that Alexa sometimes needs a lot of synonyms to kind of
Yes.
understand the same
Mm,
thing. So we kind of had to build that out completely hands on. It was
perfect.
not super intuitive. Uh, and then what it used to do is to kind of give a Python and a Python interface through which it was kind of generate a REST API call, and it used to kind of go to your uh, Oracle Analytics Cloud, as well as where that time the space was, as well as on the Oracle EPM Cloud, because the reporting system was there and the planning system was there, right? So it had got connection with PBCS, it has got connection with SBase in OAC, and and that's where we kind of say that, let's conquer the smaller things, right? If you have to
Yeah,
run a report, if you have to run a variance analysis or things like that, you can do it by command, and it used to kind of come back, say that I'm running this report with a job ID so and so, right?
fantastic.
Then we said that, now let's kind of start thinking about building that what if part of it. So
Yes.
that's where we kind of introduce those voice commands and analysis, saying that, well, Alexa, if I increase the inflation percentage for this country, by this much percentage, what is going to be my impact? So it used to always talk about those impacts mainly on the revenue, the top line revenue and the cost things, right? And then we kind of started becoming a little bolder to see that, how we can pinpoint and say that, okay, if I change this, it should understand what business rule also it needs to run in the
Yeah,
back end, right? And
fantastic.
comes back with a result. Now, there were kind of challenges as well, because you understand, if you have to kind of change a particular cell, you will actually have to give the complete dimensionality. If the application has got 10 dimensionalities, you probably will have to specify that. So that's where we kind of created those iterations that, it not only had those, it has got some metadata understanding. We built out a metadata catalog even in the Lambda side, so that it used to come back that and ask that, okay, for what entity, for what region, for what cost center.
Wow.
And once you, and it was sometimes little bit nagging, you have to kind of go and give all these inputs, but it used to come back very nicely, right? And it used to update the number, run the business rule, come back to you with what's the final outcome and all of these things. We did that, and that's where also, like, we said that, no, okay, the journey has not ended there, right? And with all this AWS Lambda part has been built, apart from voice, we can also give it in text. So that's where we started integrating the chatbots, like your Lex and a few others
Wow.
into that.
Way before your your time. I mean, it's it's the rage now, chatbots. But yeah, well, it's really good.
Right. It was basically those same synonyms and stuff like that, which chatbot
Yeah,
was using, whatever we have kind of
yeah,
put it
yeah.
on the AWS Lambda part. Now, uh, now again, the seeing is believing, right? So we kind of went ahead, presented that whole same thing and story to the customer, right? They were actually happy, saying that, yes, I can do that. But then after a couple of days, right, it says that, okay, I have to kind of go and remember which cost center, which region, this, that.
Yeah,
Why can't I see, right?
yeah.
And that's where we had to kind of, and that's where the next phase of innovation started, which took another year, by the way. So we
Wow.
also kind of showcased this to Oracle in 2018, and they were absolutely excited because the conversational analytics was just kind of coming into play, uh, and and they also kind of just moved into cloud, where they have opened up a lot of APIs, which enabled us to kind of do and showcase those skills. Now, that's where we were given the Innovation Award in 2018. But
Yeah,
that time, the product manager who was there on Oracle EPM, we were kind of having a chat, and they said that, can you do something where you can actually have opened up the visualization part of the things too? So how would you visualize? I said, I don't know. Right? I read in Amazon News that, they're coming with something where the Alexa will also going to have some screen sort of things.
yeah.
So fortunately, that screen thing came, the Eco Show came pretty like, after 6-8 months, right? And that's where we kind of integrated a Tableau report, which used to kind of talk to your Oracle EPM cloud. Now, the fun part was, like, the Tableau by itself was not at that point of time compatible to get into that screen. So what we did was we kind of created again a web interface,
Yeah,
render the Tableau report so that the web can be actually rendered back into your device, right? And that's where you, when all these commands you were kind of doing, right, change a revenue, like, a inflation percentage by certain, change your product mix by
yeah.
certain percentage, and all of these things, they would actually get to see, right, the pre and the post dashboards, and that seeing was believing.
Fantastic.
So
Yeah,
that was it.
yeah. Fantastic. So, as you know, our industry is very competitive, and there's vendors doing different things. We've got consultancies doing different things. How do you keep in tune with the industry? How do you keep with the trends? What do you do in terms of keeping updated?
See, one thing on the EPM side, I would like to kind of give you the credit that, you have so many groups and stuff like that. You kind of keep posting. But apart from that, right, I try to kind of keep myself very close to the customers,
Yes.
even in my current role. So I talk to multiple different customers, and I'm fortunate to kind of do that because I'm more into these days consulting, right?
Yeah.
So So every customer I talk to is also a source of learning, right? So everybody's business problems are very different, right? Their challenges are different, and and I try to kind of listen to them, what's their thought process around solving some of those challenges, right? Not just organizationally or process wise, but also from a technology standpoint, right? That sometimes kind of opens up a lot of new open source things which they are kind of thinking, their ITs are thinking. Plus also at the same time, right, when you kind of get a blue horizon problem, right,
Yeah.
you go out and you do your own research, and that research basically kind of helps me bounce across so many different technologies and think through that, what could be the probable solution, right? Not that I'm kind of I go up in the morning and I kind of start reading what's the Gartner's hype
Yeah.
cycle or what's the new technologies coming
Yeah.
in. I get to technologies as and when, like, I'm trying to think for a solution for a problem, and my nature is I always will try to think a little bit outside the box, rather than, because doing it the same way was never fun for me. So my every Hyperion implementation was, I try to do things a little differently.
Sure, sure. Definitely. One of my passions is to give advice to the youngsters or people coming to our APM industry. People like you give good inspiration. What would be your advice to the youngsters coming, or people in this industry who are just starting their career as juniors?
So I would say that, first try to understand the functional aspect of the business. That's absolutely key, right? Whatever technology is definitely very, very important, right? And we need to have a very, very strong grip in at least one coding language, and from there you can branch out to so many once you have that foundation. But understanding the functional aspect of the business is very important. That's where you contextualize your coding skills, that's where you contextualize your technical knowledge and know-how. And the third part I would say is listen to your customers. Don't just hear them, listen to them, empathize with them, because that way you will truly be able to appreciate the problem they are kind of going through, and you will be able to come to a solution which is going to solve their problem.
Completely, completely. Thanks for that. Where do you see, I mean, our industry is very competitive and things are changing, evolving. You were doing AI before AI has become really hot. So in that sense, where do you see in the next 5 years our industry? What's going to happen in the next 5 years, the future?
I'd give a little broad answer rather than
Yeah,
kind of straight away jumping into Gen AI,
yeah,
this, that, because
sure.
all are function of many things. So I think from a PNA perspective, right, planning analytics perspective, I would define that as with two zeros and two ones, right? So one is, how do you arrive at zero data exceptions, right? How do you have a system, like two zeros is zero data exceptions and zero time to insights, right? That's where the industry is trying to kind of cut down and get into. And third is the planning agility, right? How do you get into so many different multi-model approach, or you have an integrated planning, connected planning, and how you do assisted forecasting using AI, ML, and all of these things.
Yes,
And the cornerstone is, and the fourth part, the last one is business partnering. That's the key focus. That's the only focus that should be there in the mind, right? So business partnering is key, and that's where we will see in the market a lot of new skills will be kind of coming in, and you will see a lot and lot more data scientists probably working in the planning and analytics space. Plus, I think there will be trilingual skill sets which will be in high demands 5 years, 10 years down the line. So when I say trilingual experts, these are business, they understand the business part, they understand that they have the digital skills, plus they also understand the domain in which that business is in, right? It could be a insurance, it could be a healthcare, it could be a manufacturing, right? So understanding the industry, understanding the domain, and domain or business, right? And then having the digital skills, these trilingual skill sets are going to become very important going forward. And that's exactly where what we see these days, right? When we are kind of talking about assisted forecasting and all of these things, Tim, we see that the connected planning also is becoming connected through a finance data fabric, right? Because when you're talking about your supply chain plan or a demand plan, the frequencies are very different, the data granularities are very different, and that you are basically kind of mapping it out with your P&L planning, that is again kind of getting mapped with your HR plan and all of these things, right? So that's where a large part of the data assimilation or the connectivity between these things are going to take place. And we should be kind of going into a position 5 to 10 years down the line that data we are not just going to use only for the reporting, but also create a separate sandbox for your analytics lab where the data scientists can do experiments and jump into the prescriptive part of analytics, because they will have the right understanding at that point of time. Say, if I kind of reduce the cost, what is going to be the impact on, say, for example, a particular cost center's demand and other things, right? So that's where I think the P&A is going to elevate itself more from a CFO's organization to a CEO's organization, where a CEO also would be able to kind of listen to everybody, dial in that tube, like, just play a dial and say that, if I reduce the cost, if I try to increase the revenue, what are the impacts which is going to happen in across my organization, starting from your manufacturing plan to your supply plan to your HR plan and all throughout, right? So that level of simulation is something what I see as a true future, and it's a blend of how you become a digital FP&A and also an XP&A, and then kind of coming it all together for the future.
Wow, that was fantastic. I really learned a lot there, and it's a great insight. Thank you for
Thank
joining
you.
in this podcast. Definitely want to do something with you in the future, especially with the AI elements. So thank you so much, and have a great day, Chumo.
Thank you, Tim.
So much. Take care then. Bye bye.
It's my pleasure.